Hello and welcome to another Chat Schmat. We'll be back in just a second.
I grew up with Superman the movie, and I've enjoyed Superman Returns. I've enjoyed Man of Steel, but this one in particular to me is the perfect Superman.
We don't like change as fans, do we?
No,
Now, Superman Returns I enjoyed, but I think the problem with Superman Returns is it tries too much to be the first Superman film. So I get that Man of Steel was wanting to do something different. It felt like it was too bleak, too dark for what I think Superman should be representing.
Needs to be a bit of wait and see, doesn't there? Welcome to a super episode. And today we're obviously going to be talking about the Superman 2025 James Gunn film. So please beware, spoiler alert. Here's the big fat spoiler alert sound. So if you go beyond this point and then bitch about it in the comments, that's on you. And that being said, we're going to dip in and out of all the Superman movies and the Superman lore that we know of, but we're mainly focusing on the brand new film and how it compares to the others. And yes, in case you're wondering, I'm normally pasty white, but now I'm almost like Casper the Ghost. I'm a little bit washed out. But that's because people say you're washed out and washed up, but no, it's just a technical problem. I don't have time to fix it, but what can you do? So in 2025, everyone was anticipating the James Gunn Superman movie. Feels like it's been going for a long time, in the build up to it, which it probably has. It's been in development for a while, but it's finally here. We finally saw it. And there's two factions of fans out there. There's the Henry Cavill, um, you know, James Gunn haters, Henry Cavill lovers, and then there's the people who um, didn't like Henry Cavill's version of Superman, or I should be more precise, Zack Snyder's take on it. Um, I come from the point of view of that I enjoyed Zack Snyder's films. I just didn't enjoy the portrayal, or rather, like um, the tone of his version of the character of Superman. But Henry Cavill, all the cast were great. But I think what we're finding in the build up to this is the sort of I don't know which one, like the dragging your knuckles along the ground type mentality of people who didn't want Henry Cavill to lose the role, which is fair enough, but wouldn't let it drop when he did, and the hounding of James Gunn in the build up to the movie. But when the movie happened, we went to see it, and it was great. And with like any film you see, any franchise, you're always going to have nitpicks and criticisms. And so today we're going to focus on, what we enjoyed about the film, anything we didn't like, and did it live up to what we were expecting? And I'll start with myself and say that I enjoyed it. Um, and I think you got to go into this, and as will remind you, we did say there will be spoilers, but you got to remember this is, we've had the Christopher Reeve films, we've enjoyed them, they've been great. We've had the Dean Cain series of very other iterations of Superman that are similar lines. So when they do something different with it, that's what I enjoy. And I think the secret ingredient here for me was crypto, because that's something that's never been in a Superman, a live action Superman show or movie or TV. And it could so easily have been, you know, a really terrible, you know, um, film, because he included that. But the way it was done, even my mum, who Really, really loved the original Superman film. She thought the dog was cute and she thought it was a good addition. So that could be something that could have sank this movie, but instead, it was something that was one of the very um, most enjoyable things about the film. Not to say that that's the entire, plus point of the movie. It certainly isn't. Ian, what are your thoughts then going in? I mean, this what it feels like it went on forever before this movie actually came out.
It's strange because I grew up with Superman the movie. In fact, that video tape or VHS, yes, folks, I'm not old, and Batman 89 were near enough, never out of my VCR. So I've I've always anticipated Superman movies, and I've enjoyed Superman Returns, I've enjoyed Man of Steel, but this one in particular to me is the perfect Superman. This is the movie I've been waiting for since I was a little kid. It's just a comic book movie and it doesn't apologize for that. It doesn't try and fit into any sort of real world, not really. I mean, Metropolis, it's so funny. Like they get like about four major attacks within 2 days, and people are just like, no, it's Metropolis. And that's comic booky. So for me, this is probably one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And that's quite a statement. Um, I did like the Zack Snyder universe. So I did like Henry Cavill, and I do think the way he was treated and the way he was, sort of thought he was back and let go. I'm not blaming any one individual, but that was poor. So I understand why people are annoyed. But at the end of the day, I'm a Superman fan first. So I will never try and damage a Superman movie or any movie really, before I've seen
And
it.
to be fair, that was corporate wrangling,
Yeah, a
unfortunately,
lot of
with a
changes, a
changeover
lot
of
of
people.
changes, and
So yeah, unfortunately,
um,
then he got caught up in that, didn't he?
he did. But I mean, he was a great Superman too. You know,
Yeah.
I don't
I
see why
mean,
it has to be one or the other.
exactly. That I
I
guess
really
that
don't.
was my point at the beginning is that I mean, I'm not trying to go in a rant about it. I'm just making a point that I didn't enjoy the tone of the
What
Zack Snyder films, but I
what it
enjoyed the
comes down
films.
to, what it comes down to is, do you prefer the slightly more darker sort of deconstruction of Superman, or do you want to be the overgrown Boy Scout?
And I did
Go
enjoy him
for
in the other
Fallage.
movies too, when he was with Batman and when he was with Wonder Woman and things like that. So, I did enjoy that. I just felt he didn't get another great
The
solo movie.
difference, if I had to sum up the difference between the two Superman characters, one didn't particularly want to become a hero and was forced into it, and the other one wanted to become the hero to honor his parents.
Well, I've always had a love-hate relationship with the Snyderverse, should I say. I liked Henry Cavill, but I felt it was quite a departure from the Superman of the films that I like, because like Ian, I grew up with Superman the movie. I loved Christopher Reeve. To me, Christopher Reeve embodied everything that was Superman. His persona, his physique, the humanity he brought to that role, and the way he brought a great balance between his portrayal of Clark Kent and Superman, where he plays Clark Kent bumbling. He's hunched down and he's completely opposite as Superman. And although the quality of the films did lower with the second two movies, Christopher Reeve always gave 100% in the role. And to me, he's always been a hard act to follow. Now, the thing is, there are other actors I've enjoyed in the role. And I think every actor has had their plus. Now, Superman Returns I enjoyed, but I think the problem with Superman Returns is it tries too much to be the first Superman film. So I get that Man of Steel was wanting to do something different. However, it felt like it was too bleak, too dark for what I think Superman should be representing. Now, I know Superman comics can be darker, but I did feel like the optimism of Superman was not there in the way it was with the with Donner's original movie. Like I love his first appearance and when he first makes his appearance to to the world when he rescues Lois Lane in the first one. When he comes through the door, says, "That's a bit nice outfit." Excuse me. It's very heroic. Whereas in Man of Steel, he just basically his first reveal in the costume is basically offering himself up for an arrest. Which so it doesn't feel as heroic. Now, Henry Cavill, I do think deserved to have one more solo film. It's the same problem with Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck never got to have a solo performance as Batman. So and I feel like with the politics, especially with the Black Adam movie, I think that's what really was the upsetting part of Henry Cavill's tenure as the Man of Steel. But I never had a problem with another actor because basically I think when James Gunn took over, it was a whole fresh, clean slate for DC. DC have been
Well,
trying too
Christopher
hard
Reeve did
to,
say in an interview years ago that he's just a custodian,
yeah.
you know.
Everyone's a custodian of the role. Same with Batman as well, and because these are characters who originate in comics and literature. What and the thing is, so this whole James Gunn was like a whole revamp because I think with the DC EU, DC were trying too hard to rival the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think they ran before they could walk, and I think James Gunn was brought in to kind of reshape and put a new direction for the DC films,
Do you
and
think he was
this case of
successful,
Superman.
Neil, in this film?
And I feel like with James Gunn, he was getting back to what the elements of the Christopher Reeve movies that I thought were lacking in the Snyder one. I thought he brought back, and he brought it back in a fun and comical way. James Gunn has a way of making things comical and not let it be overburdened, and I like that there. So I think he was very successful in starting up a new universe. I actually do think that this new DCU will hopefully be more successful than the DCEU was.
One of the interesting things about this film is that from the very beginning, they explain to us that what we were saying there, that this isn't, it's not the current day, Earth that we live in. This is a version where they're aware of metahumans and superheroes, and they're aware of Superman already, and the Superman has involved himself in politics now, and that's the contention here is that people did felt Superman shouldn't get involved in politics, and throughout the whole film, there is this it's not like a heavy-handed. I think it's just the right level, but there's this kind of situation where you examine Superman, who is essentially a god, who sees himself as neutral, and he saw himself helping out, but actually, in the way the world is at the moment, in our world, that's represented there by these two countries that are, being warring against each other, and Superman getting involved. It is obviously slightly similar to certain real world events, which we're not going to really get into in this podcast. But just to say
Oh,
that it's giving us a flavor of that, but it's trying to see how would we deal with that in a world where Superman exists.
you know, in an interesting way, it harkens back to Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, because Superman 4 is Superman debating whether or not he should get involved in stopping nuclear weapons, something that Superman can easily get rid of. His powers and his strength, he can easily get rid of. But he was forbidden to interfere with humanity, and he had agonized and
It's a moral
you
dilemma,
know
really, for
and
him more than
more than
anything, isn't it?
however, as someone pointed out in a review of Superman 4, when he comes up to the United Nations and goes at this from this point on. I'm going to rid the world of nuclear weapons, and everyone, all the world leaders are going, "Yay, it's great." Whereas someone pointed out, hold on a second, if you had nuclear weapons and they were your last line of defense by a neighboring country that's go like would take over your country or attack it, if you didn't have these weapons, are you going to feel happy if Superman comes in and takes your nuclear weapons? It kind of didn't touch upon that there, and you know, so in an interesting way, I suppose this one goes into that political aspect a bit more deeper, shall we
Yeah, and
say?
I think it's not what I like about it is it's not on the nose, it's touching on current day events, but it's doing it in such a way where there's a bit of leeway for the fictional side of things, and I think what was Lex Luthor's organization called? The
Planet
name's escaped me
Watch.
now. Planet Watch, that's it. Now, if you in the real world, in the UK, they call them like Quangos or watchdog, like not watchdogs, was it ombudsmen, people like that. There's different organizations that have certain authority over things. They're not necessarily the government, but they're or think tanks. That's the other ones. So they're not necessarily part of the government, but they're maybe a contractor or a think tank or they have some form of influence. And that's what I enjoyed about this version of Lex Luthor actually, is that he's already, when we get to meet him, he's already worked out all these different moves that he can use to fight Superman with the uh Ultraman. I thought there was a lot of very interesting sort of subplots going on with, that all accumulated into what went on in the film.
But what was great was he knew that if he started a conflict between two countries, then Superman would intervene, and that's what he wanted, so that he could say to America, "Look, let me stop him." He wanted a legal way to go after Superman. So, he was always 2 or 3 moves ahead.
Hi there, thanks for stopping by. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel because we're on a mission to get 1,000 subscribers. Helping us to do so will unlock features on the YouTube channel, including monetization. Doing so will support the channel and help us create more content, better content, and be able to do more. So, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe.
He's back. You're 5 o'clock.
Copy.
12C. 18A. 98Z. 8H. 74D. 44T.
And what did you think of Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, Neil?
Well, actually, I thought it was good. I think he captured the kind of racist and slightly xenophobic attitude to Lex Luthor, especially in the way he feels in his attitude towards Superman.
He was quite
And
vicious, wasn't he, as well, Neil? When
yeah,
when
very
when he had
vicious.
them in when we see in this what was the name of it, Pocket Universe, and he had these people in
Hmm.
boxes, sort of cages, and he just outright killed people to taunt Superman. I mean that was, I personally felt those were some of the most emotional uh, and kind of very, very interesting parts of the film, that you see that whole dynamic of him wanting, Superman to be his bitch and bring these people in and to get his way, just slaughter them in front of people, and not be bothered. It's very, very vicious, isn't it,
Yeah,
compared to a lot of others?
especially that one
And he
where
does say
especially he does
he
that.
hates metahumans. You know,
Yes,
he
that's
can't
And
right.
that was
Yeah.
stand that
his.
they're powerful and, they could do more than he could do, sort of. Yeah, he's jealous in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he hated Superman the most because I think his good image
He reminded me a bit of
made
Elon
him.
Musk, in a sense. Of obviously he's not South African, but he reminded me of someone who has a lot of money and a lot of technology that could be used for good, but because he has an ego and it's being crushed, he's using them in a bitter dispute against somebody that he'll never be able to defeat by himself. So it's kind of without getting to. I'm not trying to say that Elon Musk is that level evil because obviously this is fiction, but I'm just saying that if someone like him ever loses it about something, he's got the wealth to create these types of things. I mean, I remember he said about drones they could be switched to kill very easily, So,
Yeah,
and that was
but
him, in a creepy interview saying that, and you're kind of thinking, oh, so
but
he
they
could be like a Lex Luthor type, couldn't he?
but they got Krusty doll in Absolute Simpsons for one of the Halloween specials where there's a killing Krusty doll, and they take it to the shop and the guy goes, "Ah, there's your problem. You haven't switched to evil. You should put it down to good." Yeah. I'm just thinking, like the way that James Gunn somehow made crypto very successful. Do you think you could do the same with Batmite?
I hope not. Come on. I mean, here's the thing about crypto. It, for as successful as crypto has been, there is people that love the movie except for crypto. He's a
I
very
know
polarizing character,
you're
but
you're gonna get that. You are gonna get that.
yeah, because I like one of our friends who's a big Superman fan and a big comic book fan. The one comic book character he always hated from childhood was Crypto, for the simple reason he doesn't think it makes any sense. How can you have a super dog? You know,
every every franchise had a dog. I think even the $6 million Man franchise had a bionic dog at one point.
sure, we had a whole film, Super Pets, didn't we? Uh,
Oh yeah, because I think Crypto will look very butch in that.
There was a cartoon show. I'm pretty sure there was a
yes.
cartoon show called Super Pets. Um, but the thing about it is, the way that the crypto was done. Uh, you see, when Scrappy Doo first came about, he the format of Scooby Doo was really tired, so they brought in Scrappy Doo, and he was a bit more exciting and interesting. But what happened was people, because they only did, they got rid of the rest of the gang, Freddy and Velma, and it was just Daphne, Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy, and people got annoyed with that. I think it depends on the level of, how you do something. I always thought that in that episode, the crypto added value to the episode. The fact that he was chewing the drones as if it was a dog chewing a toy.
Mhm.
I think it added comedy where it needed to be,
Mhm.
and also the fact that he is a super dog means that the villain just can't come up with a shotgun and
I
kill him.
what the thing I
I'm just
love
glad he
is
kept the
when
cape.
they kept the cape, that's true. But I really loved when, he's talking to Lois, and I think this sums up Superman's character. He says, Lois says he's just a dog, and Superman turns around and goes, "Yeah, not even a very good one, but he's alone, and I have to find him." That to me, that sums up the Superman I grew up with.
And if you want to get in touch with us, here are the many ways you can do so. We're on Twitter or X, and it's @ChatSchmat. The same on Instagram, @ChatSchmat, and we're also on Blue Sky. On Blue Sky, it's @chatschmat.bsky.social. And we've been on Facebook for a while, but we haven't really said anything about it. But here we are. It's facebook.com/chatschmat. So you can come along there. And finally, of course, as always, we're on email, and that is show@chatschmat.com. So please get in touch, and don't forget you can also comment on the videos as well.
And I know they ribbed him about it a little bit, which, it's because the character, Guy Gardner and that, because when he was fighting the creature, he wanted to put it into a zoo somewhere, and they would just kill the
Yeah,
damn
that's
thing,
what I was to say. Because he was trying to be the humanitarian that, that's not cool.
And he also
And
helped the
interesting
little
that,
dog too by super breath, didn't he? Blowing it
He
out of
yeah,
the
did.
way.
and Save the Squirrel.
I
Um,
noticed how when Metropolis finally decides to evacuate, they show everybody taking their pets with them. Like you had turtles and
That's
I
right.
think there
That's
was
right. Yeah.
other animals in their fish
Hmm.
and
Even though it's Superman's film, we do have supporting characters from other DC um comics. The Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific,
Mr. Terrific's
Hawkgirl.
inclusion in this was really well done, I thought.
one of the
He was
characters
he was the right character to be there to help, if you know what I mean.
he was. But I was very excited when I heard it. Your character, what is his name? The shapeshifter, Metamorpho. That's it.
Yeah, the one who
You know,
was put
turned into
put
kryptonite was used against Superman.
yeah.
Because he's always been in the comics, and I think if you have the animated shows, and I always thought that's one character I'd probably never see in the film, so I was really excited. And he's played by Anthony Carrigan, who was also in Gotham playing Victor Sass.
Oh, see Victor Zsasz.
He was, so he's got like a DC sort of link.
Even if a film, he has very little screen time compared to Ryan Reynolds, but I already feel like he's a better Green Lantern.
See, it's amazing what this film did because, you know, if you think about it, there were so many characters and the film was so busy. It just gave you little tastes of these characters to whet your appetite. They just gave you just enough of what you needed for this film. And then you realize that some of these characters are going to be used throughout the DCU, like Guy Gardner coming back for the Lantern series and
I mean, yeah, if we go back to other films in the past, whenever they try too many villains and too many heroes, it sometimes becomes overloaded. Look at the Joel Schumacher Batman movies. Sometimes
yeah.
they felt a wee bit overloaded.
So
I mean
yeah,
this
I just wanted to talk about the at the beginning, the Fortress of Solitude and the robots, because I thought the way they did the Fortress of Solitude, and I haven't read the All-Star Superman stuff. I don't know if that's, I know like there's certain different versions of Superman where there's one where he's got a giant key and only Superman can open it
yeah
with a key.
left it
Uh,
because he's the only one who can lift it.
yeah, so this one's obviously his DNA. They said was the
Yeah.
activation. But the robots were very well done as well. It was Alan Tudyk was the main. Uh,
Gary.
he eventually became Gary, and the fact that they brought him in and they played his parents' mission that was corrupted. Now his parents, Bradley Cooper was Jor-El, and Angela Sarafian is Lara. Now I don't know much about her. She's been in a few things, but I'm not familiar with her. But obviously Bradley Cooper, and they're speaking in a dialect that sounds like obviously it's Kryptonian. That was a good subplot too. That his message or their message, sorry, that he listened to that because it was soothing, but is obviously corrupted. So yes, there was a character of the engineer who was a human that sacrificed their humanity and became a metahuman who was able to get inside computers and things. And I'm just sort of paraphrasing what she can do because I'm not sure exactly of her full abilities, but she's able to get inside. This sounds like the 1990s TV shows inside the computer, but she was somehow able to like, I don't mean this to sound dirty, but insert herself in there and access the data and kind of unclog it or repair it or whatever,
Reassemble the
and is able.
message. Yeah.
Yeah, she reassembles the message, and we find out something that if I was to say there was one thing I didn't like of this movie,
Yeah.
and when I say don't like it, I'm I'm okay with it because it's a different take, and I have no problem with that. But the fact that his parents were much more like Zod in this sense, that they wanted to rule over the people. I think it makes it a much more interesting story from his point of view.
It gives him something that he has to struggle with that isn't
Yes,
physical,
it's a
you
yes,
know.
it's a bit more of an emotional depth. So I
And
understand, why they did
the
that.
film is about, Superman realizing his greatest power is his humanity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So it
And
plays it nicely to that.
yes, it does. It
because
does.
I agree with you and I agree with you because I did not, I wasn't too keen on Jarell and Lar being more like Zod in how what they wanted for Kal-El. So the difference is in the original Superman with Marlon Brando's Jarell, when Clark came of age, he learned who he was. The holographic and the crystals that Jarell had sent had created an AI Jarell that allowed him to tutor his son. Where in this one we didn't get that, or he has one message, so he doesn't really know all about Krypton in the way that
Well,
he
we
he
don't know
because
what he knows
Because the
because
robots are there.
the robots are there, but also if you remember in Superman the movie, he was also taught on his journey to Earth by Jor-El.
yes,
So
or not,
we don't know the extent of the origin, and what he knows and what he doesn't know, or who built the robots even.
Perry White, Wendell Pierce, the actor's called. Um, and this is just a nitpick from me, is that there wasn't enough of them. Uh, and I think obviously because there's so many other people in the movie, they
Mm,
could, there wasn't a dishing out of stories scene and stuff like that really.
no.
So I get it, I realized they couldn't do that, but in a future film, I'd love to see more of that. Jimmy Olsen as a ladies' man.
And from the comics.
The Eve Teschmacher as well was there, and it was all very modern. I think obviously, like when you see in the Superman the movie, although yes, it was the 70s going into the 80s, but Jimmy Olsen still had the old school, bow tie and stuff like that. I suppose the more modern one was the 1990s, Dean Cain series, where they kind of modernized Jimmy a bit. But when we
I
had
think
what was even in Superman Returns, he was dressed with a bow tie, wasn't he?
Mm,
well, don't forget there's that lie. I think he even Superman 4 he does a classic Jimmy Olsen line goes, "What a scoop!" With the photo
That's
when he
right.
arrives at the United
That's right.
Nations.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and there was an actor, he was one of the henchmen, Terence Rosemore was the actor. He
mm,
played a character called Otis Berg, which tickled me when I saw his name, the character's name.
So,
And then Ma Kent was an actress called Neva Howell, and Pa Kent was Pruitt Taylor Vince, who's been in so many things. He was very good in The Mentalist as well, but he's been in so many um,
yeah. I think
TV
the
shows and
guy
movies.
they really went for the accents. They really Southern Jules for ma and pa. They really
yeah,
played on the ma and pa
that's
aspect of
that's been getting a fair bit of criticism that they made the parents very simple with what a lot of people are saying. But
They didn't, though. They weren't simple. They
no,
they
it
were
didn't.
they were
The accents are
homely and
stronger.
folksy. That's all it
yeah,
was. But
yeah,
certainly weren't simple. It was more folksy. That's what I suppose you could
I
say.
think
But
so. I think so, but a lot of people think they were just kind of. I've seen a lot of like sort of people, online saying like dumb hicks almost, and I think that's
oh,
unfair,
It's
you
I
unfair.
know.
didn't I didn't see that myself. I just thought it was a bit of humor, because he says,
Yeah.
oh, he says it was nice to meet Luann. It's Lois,
Mm,
Dad.
mm,
Now, I suppose also you go more, the more really the full on man pa, that kind of
mm,
aspect. You've had, I mean, last time you had, Jonathan and Martha Kent, it was Kevin Costner and Diane Lane. And then you
Mm.
had, and then in the Christopher Reeve movie, you had the legend that was Glenn Ford and Phil Thaxter. It's there's a different
The
caliber
scene
each
between
time.
Pa Kent and Clark about the message and his purpose and all. What I love about that is they're sitting there and Pa Kent's starting to tell a story about what was it, a taco place where he gets tacos or
Burrito.
something, and they
Yes.
or burritos was it? And he's
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, they were just as good," and you're thinking, "This is just like a story," and then it turns into giving some actually brilliant advice. You know,
Yeah.
it you thought for 1 minute that he maybe wasn't capable of giving that sort of advice, but then he does, and
That's why I think it's unfair to label them. I didn't know
oh
people were
yeah,
saying that
yeah,
because just
unfortunately.
because somebody has an accent doesn't mean they're not intelligent. And I certainly think,
I mean, the
you
first
know,
time, or sorry, the second time we seen the movie, Neil, like there's people going out of the cinema, you know, mocking them, their
Like I
their
remember,
accents and
like, do you know what the complaints? Do you know when the trailer came out? Do you know what one of the complaints were from the Snyder fans? Oh, he has to get his mum to clean his boots for him.
it was just that throwaway
wow.
mother line. Mothers like to do stuff for their sons. Come on.
I mean,
Well,
I mean,
we're
come
not
on,
going to we're not going to acknowledge, this kind of
Snyder fan.
petty, snide remarks that people make. But I will just say, from the point of view, of us and having seen it, and um, I really enjoy. I thought they were great characters, and
Me too.
I think if you do think people exactly the same way every single time, then the actor's not really allowed to bring their own style
But
to it.
I
And I
thought
thought the
it
two
was
people
very,
were great.
I thought they came across just so human. You know,
Mm.
there was that really sort of human quality, loving parents, so I thought it worked fine.
Um,
I like the fact that, they're maybe not that au fait with technology, a bit like my parents. When you see her on the phone,
and
she's got it
you
on the
know, I
desk and I thought that was great.
and and they still had, and John and Martha still had. They've always had that charm, that simple charm that and brought up on good old fashioned morals. To find who Clark was as much as Jarrell did, but probably even more so. I know they play that more in this film, but they were his parents for many years before he learned of his Kryptonian heritage.
In
Mhm.
Smallville in particular, John Schneider and Annette O'Toole, especially in the very early seasons, were very good at that. And in the Lois and Clark, New Adventures of Superman,
Mhm.
um, his parents in that series were Kay Callan and oh Eddie Jones. They were, again, they didn't kill him off. He went to them for advice. And in
Was
Smallville in particular, John Snyder's his version of Jonathan Kent was always about, you still got to do your chores. We're still living in a family home. But he kind of grounded him, when
Mhm.
the t sort of teenage life gets in the way and he's dealing with learning about his abilities.
was
He keeps him grounded, and I think that's what they did in this film too.
Yeah.
was Lois and Clark one of the first times that they depicted Jonathan Kent still being alive when he's an adult?
In Superboy, they were alive
Mhm.
as well, which would have been
Yeah.
just before that, but they weren't as regularly in it. They weren't in it
No.
almost every episode. They were only in every a couple of episodes
Because
a season, if that.
the animated series had Jonathan alive as well as an
Yeah.
adult, and obviously Kevin Costner's Jonathan Kent did get killed. Well, but they did it differently.
Mhm.
Obviously, they had him having to
Uh,
prevent him from saving
he
him.
did, he didn't want Clark's secret to come out, so
I think in
Mm.
the original, Richard Donner version, killing his father off helps set the scene that he may be a god with all these abilities, but he can't
to his
stop
dad.
death. You know,
Mm. Yeah.
he has. It was about managing your limitations, I suppose. You know.
And also in Donner's original film, it also led to the next stage of his development, which is when he finds the Green Crystal, and then he has to say goodbye to his mum because he's going up north,
Yes.
to
All right, Chuck, hey up.
Just up the
I was like
north,
up
you know.
north,
Not that north.
and I know he's going north,
And what I would like about this is that the CG and everything in it is very clear. It's not. It's believable. I found when not to get too involved in this in the film I'm talking about, but just in so much as to say that the Flash, the way there was various different levels of poor CGI in that. There was the really sort of wrong looking things in it, and then there was the whenever Zod or whoever was flying around, they were able to leap about and move in ways that don't look realistic in gravity, don't look, like a computer game almost. Whereas I
Yeah.
find in this that you could tell what was happening. What I really enjoyed actually was the way that they did the flying scenes. If you think back to the Zoptics in the original, where he's flying towards the screen, but there's another lens that's pulling away. So the background is there and he's there, but they're on separate lenses. And what I found about this was it was like an action cam was filming him. It's like someone, you do like a skydiving thing and they put like a
Oh,
GoPro and
but also,
that's what it looked like. And you could really feel, you could almost feel the wind as you're flying along with him. It felt like super real, didn't it?
al-
I
also,
think they
I
used
think,
some sort of drone technology as well.
Ah, right.
and I think CGI's come a long way now that they're able to put the L symbol back on the cape, which has been taken away for ages because I think it was easier for CGI
The other
purposes.
the other thing is that the Snyder first, was always filmed very darkly. It was always darkly lit, you know. So, doing special effects and seeing what's going on and in Zack Snyder's, I'm not saying this is the wrong approach, because again I understand that Superman can go fast, but he was always going fast and it was becoming, there was elements of it that was a bit of a blur. Whereas this movie, yes, he's still moving fast, but it's during the day. So you've got more light, you know, so you
Yeah,
can
it's
make things
done.
out a bit
Even
easier.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. It's
even the
it's
suit.
it's not so much that it's not so much what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to the Flash, yes, it deserves all the criticism, I guess. But the,
It's
the other Snyder films, they're the only criticism I have of that stuff is that it was, as you say, it was kind of too grand and too. It was just too. It didn't. It didn't suit it as well as it does here. And there's a lot of like maybe motion blur and stuff going on. It's a bit like it's one of my criticisms of the Transformers movies is that there's a lot of stuff happening, but you can't tell what bit's what. What's that supposed to be? What's this supposed to be? It moves around. Whereas when you see people falling in this, so you see something moving or coming towards them, or there's a fight scene, not just superhero films, but a lot of films that have CGI now, some of it, it's very muddy. You don't really know what's happening. And when I watch it again, that was one thing I thought I'll make a note of that because that's an eye for detail that someone's actually gone and looked at that and said, yeah, no, let's make sure people can see what's happening here.
Also, I mean, is that the bit where he's fighting the creature and then he's been pushed towards the building? I don't know if it was a comment to the Snyder films basically destroying every building, or the fact, but he leans on the building, and all you see is one crack of glass. He
the
just
other thing with the effects. I suppose we have to be fair to Man of Steel and remember it was 2013. So this is a modern movie with the latest technology and
Yeah, and but
also,
that also makes the case for the Flash as having no excuse.
oh,
I know. I also think in a way that harkens back to Christopher Reeve's movies is a tone of blue in the suit. It's a lighter blue than what Henry Cavill had, and it's more kind of like the same tone, the same shade of blue that Christopher Reeve's suit had. And even bringing the red trunks back have
Well,
been
what I will say about
disappearing.
Snyder is that he had an idea in mind as to what he wanted to do, right? And if he resigned to the fact that that's what he was doing with Superman, I can't really criticize Henry Cavill's costume in that way. My criticism of it was that I didn't feel that that's how Superman's suit should be, you know. So I guess I was kind of biased in that way, in that that I was not going to like it because it wasn't, but him having the suit that I wanted wouldn't have fit those movies.
I think in retrospect, uh, I guess after we watched Superman Returns and we complain about Superman Returns being too much like Superman the movie, um, that maybe in retrospect, maybe doing Man of Steel was an attempt to do a new take on Superman.
Without
Yeah.
doubt. And
I
remember, Christopher Nolan was having success with Batman Begins, The Dark Knight.
mhm.
So
There is a
But the
logic to
thing,
it. I just think a lot of fans, because well, I'll speak for myself, all right? And my thing is that Marvel do those sorts of movies very well. Batman movies do that sort of thing very well. So whenever you bring Superman in, you think you're going to get something different, and it was doing the same sort of thing. I guess that's part of it too. You kind of thought, well, we need a lighter character to, go against these other characters. That was part of it too. But, again, it's not. This isn't the criticism of Zack Snyder's filmmaking, because I really like the visuals of Krypton, and I liked Henry Cavill, and although yes, what I would have preferred him to have the sort of Christopher Reeve style suit. I actually didn't have a problem with his suit. I just felt Superman's suit shouldn't be, that dark. That's it, but the suit itself looked great on Henry Cavill. But on that point, um, if you guys remember, there was a whole lot of criticism of these pictures of the suit, people saying it looked like pajamas and all the rest of it. And then there was the whole business of David Cornsweet said himself that he wanted to have the underpants on the outside. His reasoning for it was in the way that wrestlers have a costume.
mm,
It was to be disarming to kids, which I think is a good idea. What did you think, Ian, of the costume on screen?
I thought it looked fantastic. I think, what happens with all these movies that comes out is there's some stuff like from the set, and you have to remember that's not what you're necessarily going to see on screen in the final version, it's just part of it. So I think, again, I think it was a case of, you have to wait and see. And I really liked it. It sort of had this sort of material, 3D printed material vibe to it, you know, and I do think, it didn't have as much obviously of the muscle padding, but
It's a bit
my
like a
my
ski
sort
suit
of
or something, doesn't it?
wee bit. I but my sort of thought on that is, muscle padding, do you need to show Superman's muscles? Because
Well,
he's
it's probably
Superman,
more
you
aerodynamic
know.
for flying. Well, the current suit that he's got is probably
Yeah.
more, if you were
well,
flying in, it's more resistant to stuff and
well, the
aerodynamic and
thing
stuff, but I
is,
don't know.
I don't know where it is, because obviously Christopher Reeve basically worked out. He was put
Yeah.
on that at a workout regime with the prize to bulk him up, so that Christopher Reeve had this massive physique that was Superman in the comics.
Mhm.
Whereas, and his costume was more like a leotard, more like more like akin to what it is in the comics.
Mhm.
Um, but ever since Superman, Superman turns, the costume has probably become a bit more layered, a bit more textured. I mean, obviously the S shield has become a bit more three-dimensional on the chest. One of the things in Superman Returns that I think is overdone, and thinking back to it, was the S shield having those little mini S's inside along the S shield, which I think maybe a bit over designed.
Yeah, we should remember that like one of the criticisms of Brandon Routh's suit was it was too dark.
Whereas this one I think captured the color scheme of Reeves' original, which I
Yeah,
liked.
I mean, I think this suit captures different eras of Superman, actually. You've got the slightly longer pants, you've got
High neckline.
the high neckline, the gold or the sort of gold outline around the S, you know. So I think it's quite different styles together in a way, you know. So
Mhm.
I didn't. The long-winded answer from me is I like the suit, you know, but it's more how the person acts in the suit, isn't it? You know.
The Christopher Reeve version of the suit, as we've said, I've seen people, react to the Superman 1978 movie online. Young people, different ages, mostly young
Mm,
people who weren't alive, it's the first time watching it,
mm.
and all the ladies swoon over Christopher Reeve as Superman because he's so different as Clark, and when you see him in the suit, it looks natural, and you can tell it's not what would you say?
I
It's not padded. So
David
See,
I
Corn
guess it depends
done
what you
this a
want.
bit too, but I love the posture that Christopher Reeve did when he was Superman. It was straight. When it was Clark, he was hunched over a bit.
yes,
And
crouch.
David, like you remember the interview scene in this new film with him and Lois? You know, as soon as he starts the interview, he sits up and straightens up because he's
Yes.
talking as Superman.
Yeah,
You know,
And that's what
and the
the
also
interview
another.
in the original Superman movie was one of the most memorable scenes in a superhero movie. And one thing I made a note of, just while you talk about that, a standout moment, if you like, for me was that the interview that he had with Lois was done in such an interesting way. They'd only be going out, for a couple of months. And so this was a very personal situation. He let himself into her apartment. I was making, breakfast for dinner. Um, and so he was, just being very casual. And then she's, in a way, he talked himself into this, impromptu interview. Part of what we were saying before, in the sense of Superman thinks he's neutral, and she's pointing out from a very kind of journalistic way where she thinks he's not being neutral and how it can be seen. So the way that happens, all right, so they're not flirting um, in the same way that the original interview was, and in some
Yeah,
of the other versions of Superman, but it shows up the character of Superman versus Clark, and you know he's having to switch between the interview, and he's what because obviously he didn't know how to work the tape machine, and she's saying it's still recording, and so he's
hashtag
having
super
to
shit.
yes, so so there's a more human element, whereas whenever Lois Lane in this, Margot Kidder, she was talking to a god, you know, and
I think
so I do think
And
I
also
enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting.
the difference is obviously, this Lois knows him as a man, she's dating
Hmm.
him, whereas
Yes,
Mark Kidder's just looking at, as you said, this figure, this
exactly.
god with all
The
these
persona.
another
abilities. Yeah.
the other interesting thing with Margot Kidder going back there is that her personality changes as someone because she's always very gutsy. She's always talking to Clark like a little brother. Always kind of being very gutsy, kind of putting Clark down, and whereas when she's with Superman, she suddenly turns into a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Weak at the knees and yeah.
Can you read my mind?
yeah, yeah, like don't forget the first question she asked him, "Are you married?" You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interview scene, um, what I liked about it as well is it had all those layers, but she was questioning whether he was the man for her as well.
Mm.
And then because she was talking to Mr. Terrific about it, and he was like, "Oh, I don't do, interpersonal relations." But that's what I liked about it is that, you know, at that point in time, she was not really sure she wanted to do this thing. And then by the end of the film, she kind of was, yeah, all right, let's
Realized.
do this.
But the
You know.
great thing I loved about that scene was it's really the only time the movie slows down.
Hmm.
And also it's a great way to get exposition out of the way, and do it in a way that doesn't feel overly forced.
In the apartment, I can't remember now if it was the interview scene or it was another scene in the apartment, but whenever you've got the Justice gang fighting something from another dimension happening in the background.
I don't know.
It's basically
Very well could be.
uh you
More than likely.
know it's one of those things which, moving on to the next point of conversation, is that Superman's got help in this film, and in that world it actually makes sense, because in the versions of Superman that have gone before, he can't be everywhere. He has to make a choice, and so if he's got people like that, they can take care of the smaller stuff, where, because obviously Lex was trying to give him distraction here and there, so it allowed him to be able to, tackle the
Or
bigger
as
issues.
or Green Lantern said, he got enough. They got enough good.
That's right, yeah.
The thing is, I actually think there. See if Christopher Reeve, um, had his accident, and and Tim Burton, was doing another film. Would Do you think there might have been a time where Keaton's Batman and Christopher Reeve Superman could have been seen? I mean, there's rumors
They
about.
were planning to do it. They were planning to do it because there was I'm not sure who it was, one of the executives or something. Whenever they bought the franchise back, might have been the Salkins actually. Whoever it was, maybe it was somebody Warner. I forget who it was. Whoever they bought the rights or whatever were going to come back, and I think maybe it might have been the Salkins wanted to buy it back, um, and what they wanted to happen was they wanted Christopher Reeve to come back and do like another three-movie deal, and as part of that, um, include um, Tim Burton's Michael Keaton as Batman. And I think there was plans to do a crossover. Now it was only in a "we'd love to do this" sort of stage. I don't think anything
Yeah,
was
Oh yeah.
ever scripted, but
because in
there was something I was watching on YouTube recently where they they were talking about that, and they said, yeah, that it was, I think it was in and around the mid 90s, maybe 1994, because they did
I
do a
mean,
movie together, and I think it was
Mhm.
around that
they
time
just
that they were talking about doing it, because it's such great chemistry. They weren't in that many scenes together, but they had really good chemistry. And
and then
I think Michael Keaton probably would have been up for it, but it was just a matter
but
of,
then back
seeing what would happen.
and then because there is that in Batman Forever, there's that line where Newman takes going drive all goes, "Where are you going to go? The circus is probably halfway to Metropolis by now." And then in Batman Realm, obviously the line is, "This is why Superman works alone." Though I would have preferred to see Christopher Reeve in Tim Burton's version, not the Schumacher version, because I think he would work better alongside Keaton rather than Clooney. And also, I don't know if Superman, even the Snyder version, I don't know if it would fit in with what Nolan's take on Batman was, because Nolan's Batman was very much in the real world and not as much
Mhm.
in the comic book world. I don't know if Superman would have been as easily realized in
No,
Nolan's take.
I don't think DC, or maybe it was Warner Brothers, they weren't that keen on it, but they did say if Christopher Nolan wanted to talk about it and do it, they would certainly listen, you know.
Yeah,
But I don't think, I mean, obviously Nolan probably wouldn't want to be tied down.
They wanted to rescue the Superman. They wanted to actually breathe new life into the Superman franchise
They
in the
did.
90s because of what happened with Superman 4. So I think that's why there was movement on it. But obviously, unfortunately, Christopher Reeve had that accident and it never materialized. But, that being
and then
said, I do think that the versions of Superman that we got, in as much as that I wasn't really a fan of the sort of tone of Snyder's Superman, it's not like I left the cinema thinking that was a pile of what. Yeah, all right, I didn't like the way he handled Zod and stuff like that. My little nitpicks as a fan, but you couldn't have criticized the movie for the
No.
mm,
visuals and the style and the storytelling. You just, it wouldn't be fair, to, just because I didn't like that, then to criticize everything, because I don't think that's deserved for those movies. But the same thing can be true that if it's like anything, if somebody else comes along, like when they're doing the Bond films now, we're all like, oh, who are these people doing the Bond? We don't like change as fans, do we?
No,
It depends on the chain, I think sometimes. Like
I think, yeah,
I
but I
think with
think it
Bond,
needs to be a bit of wait and see, doesn't there, with this,
it does.
yeah,
which we never allow.
I think with Bond this time it's more a case of I think that's the problem for me is, and I'm going to have a tangent here with Bond. It's more a case of this is the first time that the Broccoli's are not really involved anymore, and they've been involved since the beginning, especially along with Harry Saltzman. It's been a bit of
Mm.
a family business.
Yeah.
Right?
But I do think James Gunn has a good mentality. From what I've seen of him, there's the way when he spoke to Henry Cavill, he said he was an absolute gentleman the way he handled it. And David Corenswet had said there, he said he wasn't going to reveal the details because they were personal, but he said he got a supportive letter from Henry Cavill wishing him well. So I think that the fans that are all over the James Gunn and so on about that need to realize that these are actors, they've got a career. Right, yes, it was probably wasn't handled the best, but they've got to move on with their own life too. And I don't think he wants people, you're not going to win any favors with Henry Cavill by crapping all over the movie, because Snyder and James Gunn are friends, so
You know,
it's
because I
just
said
he's a
earlier,
different guy doing a different take.
I don't get it because I wanted the Snyder first to succeed. I really did, because DC is what I grew up on, and I want
Mhm.
this to succeed. To me, to try and sabotage or bring one down makes no sense to me.
I mean, Tim Burton and Schumacher were friends. I mean, because Joe Schumacher said, but when he got off for Batman Forever, he wanted to ask Tim Burton before he accepted because he didn't want to be muscling in on his
I think the one thing
territory.
James
But
Gunn said that he didn't realize when he took over that one of the biggest controversies would be about the pants or no pants, to the point he went to Zack Snyder and said, "What's your take on this?" Obviously, you didn't. And Zack Snyder, I think, just said, "It's not that I have anything against the pants. I just couldn't make the costume work with it, you know." So we decided to
yeah,
go without. It
It's a
wasn't,
practical thing,
basically,
yeah.
yeah,
I didn't realize this is as big as the nipples were in Batman Forever.
possibly bigger, Neil.
But
But yeah, so I do think the Eve, as she was called, but it's Miss Teschmacher really, um, was very well played in this, obviously in the acting, but as a character, as a script, it was very well played to have her in there as a seemingly vacuous person. Um,
very different from Valerie Perrine, who never had
yes,
the presence. She was very clever, but she was never portrayed as an airhead. She was portrayed more as a frustrated by Lex Luthor more so than
yes,
yeah,
and I think there have been other versions of Miss Teschmacher, Eve. Uh, in she was in Supergirl, and I think there's something else she was in as well. Um, but I didn't actually realize the first time watching that that's who she was. I didn't know until the end when I saw the credits. And then obviously the second time going in, I was aware of it. He had a lot of Lex Luthor had a lot of interesting crew with him. He was in this war room, if you like, and he was giving out orders and do this, do that, right? Let's try these tactics because Ultraman is not what he's called, the who turned
Mm,
out to be a clone
clone.
of Superman. But Superman is not very defeatable. But the way they said in this was that they because he kept like saying, was it LR or something, saying on all these different
Mm.
things, which were like moves, like fight maneuvers that
Now,
they've worked out
and
that
and
could.
you have to take that as with a pinch of salt because people are saying, okay, Ultraman can move as fast as Superman, but Lex couldn't get those orders out quick enough. There's no way, you know, realistically. But in the comic
Well,
book
what you
world,
could probably say about that, what you could probably say about if you wanted to, give the benefit of the doubt is that that was like a projected, and you would think that Ultraman would be able to just say, right, oh, that's the kind of movie he wants, right? Let's
mm,
do this, where that's what he thinks it will take, but on the like a soldier being given orders, he's still got to
mm.
use his initiative. I don't know. That's just maybe thinking about it too much, but
It is, it is. I've just noticed that a lot of people are picking up on that. Thought it was very
Hmm.
silly, but
Well,
I kind of liked it as much. At least it showed that Lex was trying different things and he was using technology as much as he,
I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I think the point of it was to show that he was a man on a mission to, if he personally and
it,
physically couldn't defeat Superman, that he would create something that could.
mm,
but it's also he'd also said that he'd studied Superman's moves over the several years, and that's how
yeah,
you'd
they
be
did
able
say
to.
that.
And
Mhm. It was a very balanced film, right? So you've got the superhero comic book, grandiose monsters, street being destroyed, fights with amongst other, supervillains and things like that. But then you've got the very human, romance, the family stuff, the sort of moral dilemma with the politics. You've got the pocket universe. Within those scenes, like I mentioned before where
Yeah,
Metamorpho.
metamorphical.
What was
Yeah,
what was the name of
I
the
think so.
actor?
Anthony Carrigan.
You don't expect that character, the way he looks and everything. You don't expect him to be, full of that kind of
there's
emotional depth. But when he's the way he acted when he saw that guy that just pulled Superman out of a hole be killed, and he's like, right, I'm gonna do something about this. That's not what it's above my pay grade or something. That kind of attitude. I thought that was a very, very emotional and amongst all that spectacular, very human reaction.
one thing that is that the kind of humor that James Gunn has those kind of bar over. It's a humor that he makes it work, but when I see other directors attempted, they don't really capture it in the same way. And it doesn't always fall flat or feels forced when other people do it. I mean, obviously, simple things do make me laugh, like the whenever Mr. Terrific is taking Lois to a spaceship, and you just have him standing there waiting for the garage door to slowly open up. And he was
Yes, you got a whole spaceship
you
in there, and
got
you haven't fixed it, got a faster door.
You have a flying saucer, but you couldn't get a faster garage door?
I haven't worked on that yet.
James Gunn is very good with in his movies with putting appropriate music. And you see when they were where the pocket universe was and they landed down, it looked like an encampment, like a military base almost,
Mhm.
And they
And they
played a
had the
song which
radio.
in the UK was made famous by Morecambe and Wise, but it was called Bring Me Sunshine, you know, Bring Me Sunshine. It was a very happy song. And they're being brought, to this despicable scenario. It wasn't there was a few moments like in Guardians of the Galaxy where they play the music, they play the song, but it was always appropriate to the scene, which I think I'm trying to think what was the thing, uh, because like sometimes they do like there was something there and they just played Toxic by uh uh Britney Spears, just to have that song there, which kind of there's some movies you think, well, they've only put that song in to sell the soundtrack. But whereas I think the way James Gunn does it, yes, all right, he's going to sell the soundtrack, but it's very appropriate to the action. It's never
Yeah.
taken away
And
from what's actually happening.
he did say, he really had to check himself and tone it down, because he says, like, in Guardians, he could tend to go a bit overboard.
Peter Quill's
Superman needed the operatic sort of.
because Peter Quill had that awesome mix, and that was the whole basis of the 70s and
That was a
80s
great
music,
awesome mix. Yeah.
Speaking of music, um, but it's they used the John Williams theme, and I think the other music in it was very, very good as well. But I wanted more of the John Williams theme.
And also
That kind of
I'm
it did
also
have it in there, but it only played like a few bars, and that was it.
is it when Bryan Singer's Superman Returns did it, because it was meant to be the same continuity as Superman movie and Superman 2. I think they had it because it was the same universe. Like I guess in a way they were trying to pay nods to it, but I think they wanted to carve their own thing because of the whole new universe.
Yeah, but they did a version of it with the electric guitar, which is really, really great. And you
Yeah.
only heard a little bit of it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they should do it exactly the way it was. I don't mean to say that they should do it the way John Williams did it. I just mean more of the theme, the way they did it.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah,
their
definitely.
their
Oh definitely.
their what would you call it? Their performance and the instruments that they used were great. I'm just saying if they'd put more of that in there, because I kind of see it as, I mean, it's never going to be that way. Obviously, in Zack Snyder was doing it with a different tone, so it wouldn't have worked. But
I
I
mean,
think it should be like the Bond theme for Superman,
oh yeah.
that it
I
should be
mean,
used in no
in
matter
a,
who Superman is.
in a way, Johnny. I mean, you know, I would love the Superman theme being in everyone. It's like, for me, the Batman thing would always be Danny Elfman's march from Tim Burton's too. But the difference was, however, is that when Schumacher did Batman Forever and he brought Elliot Goldfall along to do music, I mean there was a
I think
conscious decision not to do any revisit any themes. So it depends on if you want to revisit the themes or if you think a new universe should carve its own theme.
Well, all I'm saying is that they had the theme in there. They just stopped short
Oh
of
yeah,
the
no,
the satisfying, ending. That was all. That was
well,
just, you
oh
coming along just
yeah.
actually
got to that bit.
the ending to the John Williams theme is in there.
Oh no, I know it is. Yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying, when they were
Um,
doing the action, a lot of action scenes, they kind of got to it, and then it was
yeah.
that.
Have
That's
you
all.
listened to the soundtrack?
No,
Yeah, I've listened to it
Uh,
I think
that
it's on
there's
YouTube.
it is
on
there's a
Spotify.
fair bit of the theme. I think they were just trying to put it in there, but have their own sort of
Yeah,
take on it,
Yeah.
not that I
which,
had a problem with it, but it's just when you watch it and it gets you so it's like singing the James Bond thing, going da 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 da.
Yeah,
my
well, I suppose
biggest
that's
gripe
like
with it
You
was,
want to go da da da, but they just get to that bit.
and this is me being an old fart, but I wanted the title sequence with it, and I wanted the sign off with it, you know,
Oh yes, I would have
in the
liked that
movie.
too. I think
But
they did though in the end credits. Not that bit, but they did the titles in the style
oh, they
of
did,
the
yes,
original, the actual
Oh yeah.
text, if you like,
they did.
But
which I thought was
I
good.
think, but because one of the things I always love about the Christopher Reeve movies and Returns, that it was the build up as the S shield comes up before the title
Yeah.
sings Superman. Because John Williams' theme actually does say Superman. Actually, it actually sings
Yeah.
the. We talk about how iconic the theme is, and the theme of Danny Elfman's theme for Batman. Because I remember when I first heard Ellie Goldenthal's music for Batman Forever on the single, the themes that was on the single with "Hold Me, Throw Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me." I remember being very disappointed the first time I heard it because I was missing the
Mhm.
back because it was such a departure, but in a weird way, I've learned to really appreciate Ellie Goldwyn's music. I listen to the score. I think it's a fantastic score, and I think it does help set Schumacher's films apart from Tim Burton's as well.
Absolutely. And to credit Man of Steel, I think they were very smart bringing in Hans Zimmer to not do that sort of theme and go with something completely different, because you can't outdo
It
John
didn't
Williams,
suit. No, it didn't suit what they were doing with it. No.
because they
I mean, it's
used,
also like
I think when because they did use, I think when Joss Whedon brought in uh, Danny Elfman for Justice League, was it? They used a bit of the Batman theme, and it suited Batman fine actually. But then they used a bit
Hmm.
of it for Superman, and I just thought, it doesn't really fit with the rest of the. Whereas in this movie, I thought they made sure that the rest of the soundtrack,
Yeah,
fitted at least
because
with it.
You see that guitar
because
riff that they did in the trailer? That
Yeah,
was really good. You know, that was
it was.
but what because you don't want to do a Batman movie and all of a sudden in the background you have to play off the
No, you don't. Yeah, we don't want that. I was watching a clip the other day, and it's Kirk Allen, and he has to stop a train, and he's basically pressing up against a projection screen as the train is coming. It's great. It,
yeah.
but
I mean,
back in
I
the
have a
day,
soft spot for them. Yeah, I know.
yeah, absolutely. A for effort.
Even even the Batman serials, I think they're on Amazon Prime. I think that's where I watched
Probably
them
yeah.
there, but I haven't seen them for years and years and years. I think the version I saw was a worse copy than the one that's on Amazon, like in the 80s.
Could be, could well be.
Um, but people see different things in films. There's a lot going on. You watch it a couple of times, notice something different, you know, from when you saw it originally. And I think that's this sort of movie is going to be one of those. What I like to look for in a film is rewatchability, and I certainly think that this has got that.
This has it in spades,
Um,
I think.
yeah, because
Yeah.
you're going to notice something different. There's certain films that I watch, and I watch them, you know, quite regularly, not every day, but maybe once a year, whatever. And even those films I've seen umpteen times, there's occasionally something that I didn't pick up on, and that's the sign of a really good film that you can rewatch. Now, that's not to say that people don't rewatch the Snyder versions and all that, but
No, of course they do.
you have to,
It's
it has to
okay.
be, yeah, it has to be, from my point of view, not being a fan of those other films in terms of I liked the way the films looked and everything, but I just didn't feel the urge to go put the movie back on every so often. So from my point of view, but um, this one, I can't wait for it to come out on Blu-ray or whatever, and have a copy of it, and watch it. I mean, I guess we, I guess we could say I guess you could say we thoroughly enjoyed it. To try and sort of conclude things a bit, I would like to speak to both of you and see what your standout moments were. For me personally, I've already mentioned that the interview to me was something when I watched it I sort of really, really enjoyed, and also on a smaller scale, Nathan Fillion. I just cracked up every time he did or said something. Even now thinking about him, I just uh
It's Hardy.
you know well, yeah, apparently he insisted. He insisted. He said, "Look, if we don't do that hairdo, we're going to be in real trouble." So, and it was down to him that they included that. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff we haven't even covered. It's difficult to cover. We'd be here for weeks, which you don't want, and I don't want. Yeah, those are the moments that stood out for me. Nathan Fillion and the interview. I mean, there was so many things, so many great things. But Ian, give us a couple of moments that stood out for you.
Uh the Mr. Terrific fight sequence with his T-spears, I thought looked awesome. What the bit that I really liked was anytime, Superman was saving somebody, he's holding up a building to let the car get away. Those bits are when he zooms up into the sky to destroy all of Lax's like legion of soldiers, and he's spinning around and he's using his powers. Because I know that one of the criticisms is he's not strong enough in this movie, and he gets the crap beat out of him more times than not. But I think there is plenty of moments in this movie where you see how powerful he is.
And on that point, Ian, that um, if he's in a world of other beings that are maybe not as powerful as him, but they certainly could give a good kicking,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
um, that makes sense to show that, and then just every so often, like you say, show how powerful he is, and
mm.
how powerful he could be if he
I mean,
was
look
an
at that
asshole.
in that pocket universe. I don't know what you call it, that sort of river of whatever it was going towards the
Hmm.
black hole. You know, and he uses his super breath to push him free. I mean, I think that's pretty powerful.
Hmm.
Black hole! Oh boy! Crypto! Come here, boy! I can't get out of this! Crypto! It's a black hole! We'll never get out of it! Pull us out! Crypto! Yep! No! Stop it! Crypto! Help us out! Bad boy! Rex! Go eat!
That's why I wanted a Man of Steel too, because I think and we would have got that movie where Henry Cavill is the hero and he is Superman, doing these things, but we didn't see a lot of that because by the time the public completely accepted him was after he died.
And also, I'm kind of glad that we captured the element because some of my favorite moments is like, like the end of Superman movie. Do you know when the prison warden goes, Thanks to you, Superman, this country is safe again. Don't thank me. We're all part of the same team." That kind of,
Yeah,
or he goes to the president at the end, number two. Sorry, I let you down. It won't happen again. No, that's the kind of moments that that the start with Superman, and I think that
yeah.
this
I
movie
mean,
has
the
that kind of
Superman that
optimism.
I grew up with was the overgrown Boy Scout version of Superman, was the one I mostly know.
I always used to
Now
joke.
I've read a lot more comics where he is a bit darker, but at the time,
Yeah.
that's what I
But
know.
I always used to joke whenever Zack Snyder was doing it that Captain America is a better Superman because that character too captures that
Mhm.
essence of humility and humility in strength, and is a beacon of hope.
Absolutely.
And I think I enjoyed those movies, and I think I haven't seen the
You
recent ones because I've got a heck of a lot of catching up to do, but that's another story. So, but overall, then, for us as Superman fans, then this has been a success.
Very much so. I'm
yeah.
very happy, man. As I said, it's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, comic book movie now.
What about you, Neil?
It's up there with one of my favorites. You know, it's there are a lot of comic films that I've grown up to love over the years. And you're talking about Burton's Batman, Donner's Superman, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. There's so many comic book
Golan's
films
Captain
that
America. No.
yeah, that's guy's moments. That film
And
has its
can we
moments,
can
but
we can we have an honorable mention for Steel, Shaquille O'Neal? That's been
I've
Yes.
said.
never seen that one.
Oh, it's something.
No thing is, there's just been so many comic book films there, but obviously, for me, Christopher Reeve will always be my favorite. Just like Mick Keaton's my favorite Batman, but I am also liking different actors who play the role as well.
Well,
Even
my
though
favorite
Keaton
Batman's
and
Adam
Reeve are
West.
precisely the chum,
And
and
with
also,
that, I will say to people that leave if you enjoyed it too. We're very keen to know. So if you can leave comments and let us know what your thoughts are on it. And also, if you want to, you can email us. It's show@chatschmat.com. And we're on a mission to get more subscribers. So um,
And also
it
tell
would be
us if you
great.
disagree. If you disagree that you didn't like the movie, tell us why. Because like
Oh
our
yeah,
views aren't the right views; they're just our views. You
They're
know,
just our
It's
views.
Superman 4.
We're
yeah,
here for a discussion.
yeah.
Even if Superman 4 is your favorite Superman film, you know, say so.
Yeah. And of course, the best Superman film is Superman 3. And
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Oh,
we will in the future we will do an episode about Superman 3. It'll be a good one. But yeah, so let us know because we're interested to know. And as I say, please, we want to get to 1,000 subscribers because that unlocks a few things for us. So there will be more episodes coming out. Don't bust your chops over it. But we've got plenty of things in the pipeline that would be interesting. So stick with us and subscribe. There'll be more episodes coming up. If you're a fan of 60s TV shows, we got a couple of those coming up. Um, Lots of things, detectives, you name it.
Naked
They're all
Gun.
check our Naked Gun as well. Check our playlists. That's where you'll find if you go into our channel, look at the playlists. That's where all the different series or seasons we've got, and the different things. So Shark Fest, all about shark movies, you know, uh, things like that. So if it's specifically themed, we've got disaster movies coming up. I know it's probably been a while. If you've been watching a back catalog, it's probably been 5 minutes. Because that happens. Sometimes people binge watch something or it's suggested to you. YouTube's weird. You might not even, you might think, why the hell are these beardy tosspots in my feed? Oh, well, not my fault. It's YouTube. But yeah, like I said, if you can help us out, that'd be great. So, with that being said, though, it is time to go. And it's me, Johnny Porter, saying, see you next time.
And for me, it's up, up, and away.
You didn't go anywhere. You're still there.
Well, CGI it later. Yes.
Well, golly, Mr. Porter or Mr. Lawler, I think that's time for me to call it a night too.
That's swell.
And Johnny,
Well,
there's not many people in the world today that feel comfortable with that word, Johnny.
And that's us away. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thanks again for joining us.
goodbye.
Seriously.
James Gunn makes little things like that work, but but I have noticed that sometimes, because sometimes my criticism of Marvel films, especially with trailers, is sometimes they try too hard with the quips.
Yeah, and I mean, what
And
there
quips
was.
and quips and quips and quips can be done well, but they have to be done in a certain way to be,
I like cheese and onion.
Smoky bacon.
but you know,
No,
be certain way. But quips have to be done in a certain way to make them work. If they're just done there for the sake of doing it.
yes. What I was going to say.